Well, you remember that I've already talked about the Pope having the 7-year plan for the Laudato Si, and I ran across something very interesting. I wanted to talk about the Third Temple and what's going on with that and their ideas for that. But what's very interesting is what's coming together, and this is from the CatholicEthics.com, the Jewish responses to Laudato Si. Now the Pope's getting ready to make this 7-year plan, and we all know this is happening, coming right up here in November, and this was posted October 31st of 2018 by Gregor Bus, it says Israel. And you might find this very interesting in the fact that the alliances that are being made here are very critical and pertaining to the time of Jacob's trouble. You'll find this very fascinating to see what's happening and how the Jews are coming together with the Pope. Now, I'm not saying all the Jews, I'm just saying these specific rabbis. It says a number of Jewish organizations and rabbis, especially in the USA, but also beyond, have welcomed Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si and linked it to Jewish teachings on ecology. Pope Francis himself utilizes many of the same laws in the Torah that Jewish environmentalists have been quoting for decades. The laws of the sabbatical year and Jubilee from Leviticus 25, the protection of species from Deuteronomy 22, 6-7, and the Sabbath imperative to rest from Exodus 23:12. Jews and Christians share the concern for the protection of God's creation, often relying on the same theological and spiritual sources. At the same time, every religious tradition preserves its specific texts, its own memory, so that interreligious dialogue can help to reflect one's own tradition in light of the insights from another religious tradition. In a tragic way, this need for interfaith dialogue and solidarity, especially between Jews and Christians, has become acute again these days. The horrible attack on the Jewish community in Pittsburgh on October 27th, 2018 shows too clearly how important it is to recall again and again the special bond between Jews and Christians. Both religions share the same roots. They are the fruits of the same tree of life. The following considerations, therefore, want to stress and strengthen this deep relationship. And I wanted to mention something that quite a few years ago, perhaps it was in the early 80s, before Trump ever became president, they awarded him a plaque that was shaped like a tree, like the Tree of Life, and it was called the Tree of Life Award, and they gave it to Trump. And incidentally, he had it on the wall at his office for a while and had Hebrew writing across it, which I find is very interesting because I wrote about the Tree of Life in my book, and that's what it was all about, published in 2015. And it's very fascinating to see all the details about it in that book. The Jewish-Christian dialogue that has been triggered by the publication of the papal encyclical Laudato Si in 2015 is an instructive example of this deep relationship. The rich Jewish tradition can help to deepen the Christian understanding of human stewardship for the earth, and various Jewish initiatives can be seen as allies in the fight against the pollution of the environment and the extermination of living things. This potential for mutual learning and common action will be presented in 3 steps. First, some central Jewish teachings on the environment will be introduced. Secondly, the reception of Laudato Si in the Jewish community will be presented. And finally, some suggestions for practical steps will be made. Remember, this was written in 2018, so this is about to happen though. And number 1, Judaism and ecology. Over 4,000 years in environmental ethics has been elaborated in Judaism that can still serve as inspiration and orientation today. Let's see. Then it lists A. Wasco's 2-volume work called Torah of the Earth 2000. These teachings have motivated Jews all around the world to fight for the protection of the planet. Numerous organizations and initiatives have been founded, for example, and then they list all of these various organizations. Coalition on the Environment and Jewish Life, Jewish Climate Action Network, Jewish Ecological Coalition, Jewish Nature, and the Shalom Center. A famous story that puts the Jewish teachings and ecology in a nutshell can be found in Midrash Rabbah, Vayikra 4:6. A group of people were traveling in a boat. One of them took a drill and began to drill a hole beneath himself. His companion said to him, "Why are you doing this?" Replied the man, "What concern is it of yours? Am I not drilling under my own place?" Said they to him, "But you will flood the boat for all of us." Parallels to the current global ecological crisis can be drawn. The boat represents planet Earth that safeguards all the people that are traveling with it. This boat, however, is endangered by irresponsible actions because some human beings only have their personal benefit in mind and not the common good. And I hear the Pope say that all the time, that this fraternity of humanity is for the common good. They literally drill holes in the Earth's crust to exploit natural resources. This egoist and short-sighted behavior turns the safe boat Earth into a danger zone. The planet cannot recover from the damage done to it and poses a threat to all its inhabitants. The rabbis that wrote down this story centuries ago warn us how seemingly small actions can lead to major catastrophes. They also remind us of the common responsibility that we share. Our behavior always affects the lives of others. That is why we should bear the consequences of our actions in mind. Responsibility, solidarity, mindfulness, and the ecological crisis shows us how urgently these virtues are needed today. Then number 2, Jewish responses to Laudato Si when Pope Francis visited the USA in September of 2015. Over 200 Jewish rabbis and cantors signed a letter welcoming his commitment to the environment. Pope Francis has blown the shofar, they said, to the world in his encyclical Laudato Si, and we in rabbinic leadership have heard the call. Coalition on the Environment and Jewish Life. The eminent American rabbi Arthur Green said in a similar statement, "The Pope's leadership in this cause, expressed in his remarkable document of moral courage entitled Laudato Si, is a clarion call to all people who call themselves religious. Large parts of the Jewish community see in Pope Francis an important ally in the fight against climate change. In their view, this global problem needs strong alliances, especially between religious groups. This was already expressed by the Jewish Climate Change Campaign in 2009. As a fraction of the global population, with one small state, the Jewish people alone are not capable of changing the world. However, the Jewish tradition teaches us to serve as a light unto the nations. Isaiah 43. With this document, we are participating in an alliance of religions to address global sustainability and the existential threat of climate change. We hope thereby that the Jewish people will offer its wisdom, tradition, and thought leadership to help light the way for all. And that's from Sustaining Our Vision. In that sense, the dramatic ecological crisis also offers new opportunities. Religious communities are called to come closer together, to learn from each other, and to join forces. As Pope Francis writes, the majority of people living on our planet profess to be believers. This should spur religions to dialogue among themselves for the sake of protecting nature, defending the poor, and building networks of respect and fraternity. And that's Laudato Si number 201. And number 3, suggestions for practical steps. Networks of respect and fraternity are only possible through encounter. Whenever possible, Christians should seek contact with members of other religions and forge alliances. The Interfaith Climate Change and Renewable Energy Conference that was held at Tentur Ecumenical Institute in Jerusalem in May of 2018 is a good example for this. Members of different religious traditions came together and shared their views on sustainability and environment. You know, the Bible says, what does light have to do with darkness? But even if one cannot meet with members of other religious traditions in person, mutual learning is still possible. Rabbi Daniel Schwartz, for example, has compiled sources from Jewish tradition that are echoed in the encyclical Laudato Si. Such intertextual readings open new perspectives and build bridges between the different religious streams. For those who want to go beyond the academic discourse, numerous interfaith organizations offer room for action. The Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development, the Shalom Center, or Green Faith, have strong ties to Jewish communities and a vast experience in interfaith action. The ICSD, that's the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development, for example, has initiated a renewable energy project in Africa in cooperation with Anglican partners. These examples show how religious groups can learn from each other and take their responsibility for God's creation seriously. Christians are especially called to join forces with their Jewish brothers and sisters. Following Pope Francis, one can hope that the Church more and more discovers this rich complementary. These examples show how religious groups can learn from each other and take responsibility for God's creation seriously. Christians are especially called to join forces with their Jewish brothers and sisters. Following Pope Francis, one can hope that the Church more and more discovers this rich complementarity. Quote, the Church also is enriched when she receives the values of Judaism. While it's true that certain Christian beliefs are unacceptable to Judaism, aka Jesus, and that the Church cannot refrain from proclaiming Jesus as Lord and Messiah, there exists as well a rich complementarity which allows us to read the texts of the Hebrew Scriptures together and to help one another to mine the riches of God's Word. We can also share many ethical convictions and a common concern for justice and the development of peoples. And that was written by Gregor Buss, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Gregor Buss studied Catholic theology at Munster University and holds a PhD in theological ethics from Charles University in Prague. Since 2015, he's been postdoctoral fellow of the Martin Buber Society at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. His research interests include Christianity in the Global South, secularization, Catholic Church in HIV/AIDS in Africa, intercultural ethics, and Catholic Church and socialism. So this shows right there how the Jews have already made an alliance with Pope Francis, and they're going to be working together with all of this and bring their Torah theology about the ecological systems together with Pope Francis with this Laudato Si that's about to be signed as a 7-year plan. To me, this really added something to the fact that they've already talked to the Pope, they've already accepted it, they've already signed documents, and this is very interesting. So I think that that's really interesting that the Jewish rabbis have come together with Pope Francis, saying that they have similar ideas as far as the alliances that they're creating between each other and this Laudato Si that's going on right now. Let's look at a couple of other things that are very interesting. And one of these is an article that came out July 29th, 2014 by Ben Sales. And this is from the Times of Israel. Now, you know, everybody talks about the covenant of peace and all of that, but think about it from this angle that the Jews actually believe, and this is the title of this article, want world peace? Build the third temple. So the third temple itself being built is supposedly supposed to usher in world peace. You know, the covenant, if it's a peace plan for 7 years, is it really a peace plan, or is it really the allowance of this alliance creating the opportunity to build the third temple that they claim will bring and usher in world peace? So the covenant for the 7 years could have to do exactly with the building of the temple, creating that world peace. That's what I'm trying to say. And this article said, organization launches campaign to raise funds for draft plans of site, which, if built, it said, would usher in universal harmony. And this was back when they did their campaign to raise money on an Indiegogo website. It said, Italy, as Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. and the UN write proposals for Israel Hamas ceasefires, one organization based in Jerusalem's Old City hopes to compose a peace plan of a different kind, a detailed architectural blueprint for the third Jewish temple on Jerusalem's Temple Mount. So they're saying that this is the peace plan. The Temple Institute, which has recreated 60 vessels to be used in a third temple, and which sponsors educational programs about the temple worldwide, has created a $100,000 Indiegogo campaign to draft plans for a third temple. Now that was 2014. Building the temple, says the Indiegogo campaign statement, would, quote, usher in a new era of universal harmony and peace, as prophesied in the Bible. It's not enough to wait and pray for the third temple, the statement added. It is a biblical obligation to build it. And at the time that this was written, it says, according to Rabbi Chaim Richman, the Institute's international director, which he is no longer, the temple would stand in the present location of the Dome of the Rock, a Muslim shrine. Muslims revere the mount as the Haram al-Sharif, or noble sanctuary. But Richmond did not set a target date for breaking ground for the construction project. The temple will be built, he told JTA, when the world will want us to build the temple. Why will the world want it? Because somebody is orchestrating a health situation that's worldwide to try to elevate that situation. That's really a very curious statement. The Jewish people have a responsibility to all of humanity, he says, including Islam, Richmond said. I don't expect it to come about through any sort of confrontation or any sort of military maneuver. The Jews have to represent good in the world, light in the world. Kind of like George Soros. The Indigo campaign is tied to the upcoming fast of Tish B'Av, which mourns the first and second temple's destruction. Richmond quoted the verse in Isaiah calling the temple a house of prayer for all nations. But recently the Temple Mount has been the scene of confrontation. And it goes on and talks about all of that, things that were going on in 2014. So let me just share some more with you. Remember the Chrislam buildings that are being built over in the UAE, and we know that the Pope is planning to have the Catholic Church there, the synagogue, and the Islamic mosque there. And that's in the UAE. So this article is really interesting towards the end here. And this one came out December 30th of 2020. At the end of this article, it mentions some very interesting connections and alliances. And this one is titled, "Time to Build the Third Temple," says Israeli lawmaker. Quote, "Anyone who represents Israel cannot be disconnected from the Creator. We all are anticipating the redemption." Yet another member of the Knesset has expressed his desire not only for Jews to be able to freely visit and express their faith atop Jerusalem's Temple Mount, but for the third temple to be built in our days. Nassim Vaturi ranked 40th on the list of the Likud candidates, which means he didn't make it into the Knesset in the last national election. But with several Likud MKs recently leaving the party ahead of the upcoming national election, which already took place, Vaturi and several others are getting a chance to serve as lawmakers, even if only for a few months. As one of his first official acts after being sworn in, Vaturi headed for the Temple Mount, a religious Jewish resident of the Golan Heights. It was Vaturi's first ever visit to Judaism's holiest site. While there, he told an organization that advocates for building the third temple that anyone who represents Israel cannot be disconnected from the Creator. We are all anticipating the redemption. Now, this is the really interesting part that I wanted to get to. It says, Gulf Arabs helping Israel build temple? Some Palestinians are accusing Israel's new Gulf state allies of helping the Jewish state lay the groundwork for the third temple. In an op-ed published over the weekend, Dr. Adnan Abu Amr, Dean of Political Science at the Ummah Open University in Gaza, suggested that the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, could use its newfound influence on the Temple Mount to help the Jews gain a foothold there. This raises the Palestinians' fear that the next stage might signal the start of building the alleged synagogue with the contribution of the UAE authorities, he continued. Abu Amr noted that the UAE has no problem selling land to Jews and that the Gulf state already hosts a synagogue as well as a Hindu temple. So isn't that something? And the first thing I notice is, of course, they're trying to bring all the religions together over there in the UAE. But probably this sentence grabbed me the most. The UAE has no problem selling land to Jews. Well, I talked about how the Lord revealed to me about he who now letteth will let until he's taken out of the way, that literally is a land lease. And I believe that there's going to be some leader that's going to lease the land to the Jews, and then in the middle of the 7-year time of Jacob's trouble is going to break that lease, which would have an effect on the stopping of the animal sacrifices that are going to be starting up. So in the middle of that 7-year span, the breaking of that lease halfway through would stop the animal sacrifices. And they wouldn't be able to offer their oblations and all of that up there on the Temple Mount if that lease was broken. So is that going to be something that's going on with the UAE? And of course, all of that Chrislam with the Pope and all of those buildings that are going on there in the UAE, I told you that they're going to somehow collide with the Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, and maybe they are going to be the ones who are involved in that land lease. So this is going to be very interesting. And interesting, I should run across this article. This was in israeltoday.co.il, and like I said, it was December 30th of 2020. So you can see from these articles how they believe that the building of the third temple is going to usher in this world peace that's going to be a false peace, because you can't have all these people worshiping all these other false gods and have it be okay with God, the one true God. So it's going to create a bunch of problems and issues. And I think it's really interesting that the rabbis have already signed on, and they're in a partnership basically with Pope Francis with the environmental issues going on that are going on with this Glasgow meeting with all the leaders that's going on right now. So the 7-year plan could very easily incorporate something to help the Jews build the temple in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. And if that's the case, how long do we have before Jesus appears to take the believers to be where he is in the glory cloud? So I would say that these 3 articles put together kind of put in some more pieces of the puzzle that, you know, we didn't really realize that the rabbis were saying that what Pope Francis believes is what they believe. These Jewish rabbis are actually praising Pope Francis for his Laudato Si. And you can see how this is all going to come together. You know, hopefully we won't be here to see it come together. Hopefully we'll be taken up in the glory cloud and we're all raring to go. And yes, we have our up moments and we have our down moments. I think everybody has them, even though a lot of people put they're all thumbs up. If you've lost your very close family members and people in your life that you severely miss, you really long to go to be with Jesus, to meet them in the air and in the resurrection rapture. And all of these things, we got to be just so close to things, you know, just commencing and coming to pass that we can hardly even imagine. Just in one single flash of moment, we will be out of here with the Lord. And before you can even look up at the sky, you're gone. So we're watching and waiting, and thank you for watching my channel, and thank you for your support and love, and I appreciate everybody, and I hope you got something out of this. Sorry it took me a while to get another video going, but anyway, I found these articles very, very interesting considering what's going on now. Okay, well, keep looking up because the King is coming. I'll see you and have a good night.